American Airlines Flight 11 was a domestic passenger flight that was hijacked by 5 al-Qaeda members on September 11, 2001. As part of the September 11 attacks, Mohamed Atta deliberately crashed the plane into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City, killing all 92 people aboard and an unknown number in the building's impact zone. The aircraft involved, a Boeing 767-223 Air, registration N334AA, was flying American Airlines' daily scheduled morning transcontinental service from Logan International Airport in Boston, Massachusetts, to Los Angeles International Airport in Los Angeles, California. 15 minutes into the flight, the hijackers injured at least 3 people, possibly killing 1, forcibly breached the cockpit, and overpowered the captain and first officer. Atta, an al-Qaeda member and licensed commercial pilot, took over the controls. Air traffic controllers noticed the flight was in distress when the crew was no longer responding. They realized the flight had been hijacked when Mohamed Atta's announcements for passengers were transmitted to air traffic control. On board, flight attendants Amy Sweeney and Betty Ong contacted American Airlines and provided information about the hijackers and injuries to passengers and crew. The aircraft crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 08:46:40 local time. Countless people in the streets of New York City witnessed the strike, but few video recordings captured the moment. Documentary filmmaker Jules Naudet captured the only known footage of the initial impact from start to finish. Before the hijacking was confirmed, news agencies began to report on the incident and speculated that the crash had been an accident. The impact and subsequent fire caused the North Tower to collapse 102 minutes after the crash, resulting in hundreds of additional casualties. During the recovery effort of the World Trade Center site, workers recovered and identified dozens of remains from Flight 11 victims, but many body fragments could not be identified. The American Airlines Flight 11 aircraft was a Boeing 767-223 Air delivered in 1987. Registration number N334AA. The capacity of the aircraft was 158 passengers, but the September 11 flight carried 81 passengers and 11 crew members. This was a light load at 58.2% capacity, but higher than the average load factor for Flight 11 on Tuesday mornings of 39% in the months preceding September 11. The 11 crew members were Captain John Ogonowski, First Officer Thomas McGuinness, and flight attendants Barbara Aristigui, Jeffrey Coleman, Sarah Lowe, Karen Martin, Kathleen Nicosia, Betty Ong, Jean Roger, Diane Snyder, and Amy Sweeney. All 92 people on board were killed, including David Angel, the creator and executive producer of the television sitcom Frasier, his wife Lynn Angel, and actress Barry Berenson, the widow of Anthony Perkins. Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane had been scheduled to be on the flight but arrived at the airport late. Actor Mark Wahlberg was also scheduled to be on the flight but cancelled his ticket at the last minute. Actress Leanne Littrell, wife of Backstreet Boys singer Brian Littrell, had also previously been booked on the flight, but like Wahlberg, changed her plans at the last minute. Boarding. Mohamed Atta, the ringleader of the attacks, and a fellow hijacker, Abdulaziz Al-Omari, arrived at Portland International Jetport at 05:41 Eastern Daylight Time on September 11, 2001. They boarded Colgan Air Flight 5930, which was scheduled to depart at 06:00 from Portland, Maine, and fly to Boston. Both hijackers had first-class tickets with a connecting flight to Los Angeles. Atta checked in 2 bags, Omari none. When they checked in, the computer-assisted passenger prescreening system, CAPS, selected Atta for extra luggage scrutiny, but he boarded without incident. The flight from Portland departed on time and arrived in Boston at 06:45. Three other hijackers, Walid al-Sheri, Wael al-Sheri, and Sattam al-Suqami, arrived at Logan Airport at 06:45, having left their rental car in the airport parking facility. At 06:52, Marwan al-Shahi, the hijacker pilot of United Airlines Flight 175, made a call from a payphone in Logan Airport to Atta's cell phone. Since they were not given boarding passes for Flight 11 in Portland, Atta and Omari checked in and went through security in Boston. In the rushed check-in after the flight from Portland, airline officials did not load Atta's bags on Flight 11. Suqami, Wael al-Sheri, and Walid al-Sheri also checked in for the flight in Boston. Wael al-Sheri and Suqami each checked one bag. Walid al-Sheri did not check any bags. CAPS selected all three for a detailed luggage check. As the CAPS screening was only for luggage, the three hijackers did not undergo any extra scrutiny at the passenger security checkpoint. By 07:40, all five hijackers were aboard the flight, scheduled to depart at 07:45. Mohamed Atta sat in business class seat 8D with Abdulaziz Al-Omari in 8G and Suqami in 10B. Walid al-Sheri and Wael al-Sheri sat in first class seats 2B and 2A. At 07:46, 1 minute behind schedule, the aircraft received clearance to push back from gate B32, and was clear to taxi to the runway at 07:50. The aircraft began its takeoff run from Logan International Airport at 07:59 from runway 4R. Hijacking. The 9/11 Commission estimated that the hijacking began at 08:14. When the pilot stopped responding to requests from the Boston Air Route Traffic Control Center, Boston ARTCC. It is believed that Walid al-Sheri made the first move at 08:13:29, as the aircraft was passing over central Massachusetts at 26,000 feet, 7,900 meters. The pilots responded to a request from Boston ARTCC to make a 20-degree turn to the right. At 08:13:47, Boston ARTCC told the pilots to ascend to a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, 11,000 meters, but received no response. It is believed that Captain Oganovsky was stabbed to death in order for the hijacker pilot Mohamed Atta to take control of the plane and crash it into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Before dying, Oganovsky managed to engage the aircraft's radio system to allow air traffic control to listen to the terrorists' conversations in the aircraft's cabin. 08:16. The aircraft leveled off at 29,000 feet, 8,800 meters, and shortly thereafter deviated from its scheduled path. Boston ARTCC made multiple attempts to talk to Flight 11 without reply, and at 08:21, the flight stopped transmitting its Mode C transponder signal. According to flight attendants Amy Sweeney and Betty Young, who contacted American Airlines during the hijacking, the hijackers had stabbed flight attendants Karen Martin and Barbara Aristiguian / the throat of passenger Daniel Lewin. Lewin, an American-Israeli internet entrepreneur, had served as an officer in the elite Sayeret Matkal Special Operations Unit of the Israel Defense Forces. Lewin was seated in 9B, and Suqami was directly behind him in 10B. The 9/11 Commission suggested that Suqami may have stabbed and killed Lewin after he attempted to stop the hijacking. Lewin is believed to be the first fatality in the 9/11 attacks. During a 4-minute call to the American Airlines Operations Center, Ong provided information about lack of communication with the cockpit, lack of access to the cockpit, and passenger injuries. She provided the seat locations of the hijackers, which later helped investigators to determine their identities. At 08:24:38, Atta tried to make an announcement to the passengers, but pressed the wrong button and sent the message to Boston ARTCC. Air traffic controllers heard Atta announce, "We have some planes. Just stay quiet and you'll be okay. We are returning to the airport." At 08:24:56, he announced, "Nobody move. Everything will be okay. If you try to make any moves, you'll endanger yourself and the airplane. Just stay quiet." As before, Atta thought he was speaking to only the passengers, but his voice was picked up and recorded by air traffic controllers. After the transmissions by Atta and the inability to contact the airliner, air traffic controllers at Boston ARTCC realized the flight had been hijacked. At 08:26, the plane turned south. At 08:32, the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) Command Center in Herndon, Virginia, notified FAA headquarters. At 08:33:59, Atta announced, "Nobody move, please. We are going back to the airport. Don't try to make any stupid moves." At 08:37:08, the pilots of United Airlines Flight 175 verified Flight 11's location and heading to flight control. Boston ARTCC bypassed standard protocols and directly contacted the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, Northeast Air Defense Sector, NEADS, in Rome, New York. NEADS called on two F-15 fighter jets at Otis Air Force Base in Mashpee, Massachusetts, to intercept. Officials at Otis spent a few minutes getting authorization for the fighters to take off. Atta completed the final turn towards Manhattan at 08:43. The order to dispatch the fighters at Otis was given at 08:46, and the F-15s took off at 08:53. Roughly 7 minutes after American Airlines Flight 11 had already crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Of the 4 hijacked aircraft on 9/11, the 9 minutes of advance notification about the hijacking of Flight 11 was the most time that NORAD had to respond before the aircraft crashed into its target. Crash. At 08:46:30, Mohamed Atta intentionally crashed American Airlines Flight 11 into the northern facade of the North Tower, Tower 1, of the World Trade Center. The aircraft, traveling at about 404 knots, 465 miles per hour, 748 kilometers per hour, in carrying about 10,000 U.S. gallons, 38,000 gal, of jet fuel, hit between the 93rd and 99th floors of the North Tower. Witnesses saw the plane flying at low altitude over Manhattan and thought the aircraft was in distress. Lieutenant William Walsh of the FDNY, who appears in the documentary film 9/11, witnessed the aircraft. "We were under the impression he looked like he was going down, but we didn't hear any mechanical difficulty. We couldn't figure out why an American Airlines plane would be so low in downtown Manhattan. We sort of expected him to veer off and go into the Hudson, but he just rose a little bit. His altitude leveled off, and he was headed straight for the Trade Center. So just before he got to the Trade Center, it seemed as though he gained power. We were just watching this airplane on target for the World Trade Center. All of a sudden, boom, he disappears into the Trade Center." Quote, "The damage caused to the North Tower destroyed any means of escape at the impact zone or above it. All stairwells and elevators from the 92nd floor up were rendered impassable. trapping 1,344 people. According to the Commission report, hundreds were killed instantly by the impact. The rest were trapped and died from the subsequent fire and smoke. The eventual collapse, or, in some cases, after jumping or falling from the building. Elevator shafts channeled burning jet fuel through the building. At least one elevator shaft carried burning fuel downward, exploding on the 77th floor, the 22nd floor, and at street level on the west side lobby. Jules Naudet, a French cameraman, and Pavel Lava, a Czech immigrant, videotaped the crash. A webcam set up by Wolfgang Starehler at an art exhibit in Brooklyn to take images of Lower Manhattan every 4 seconds also captured images of Flight 11 crashing into the North Tower. A WNYW news camera left rolling on the ground also captured audio of the crash and video of the immediate aftermath. News organizations at first reported an explosion or incident at the World Trade Center. CNN broke into a commercial at 08:49 with the headline that read, "World Trade Center Disaster." Carol Lynn, who was the first anchor to break the news of the attacks, said, "Yeah, this just in. You are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center. And we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. CNN Center right now is just beginning to work on this story, obviously calling our sources and trying to figure out exactly what happened. But clearly something relatively devastating happening this morning there on the south end of the island of Manhattan. That is once again a picture of one of the towers of the World Trade Center." Later, in an on-air phone call from his office at the CNN New York bureau, CNN Vice President of Finance Sean Murtaugh reported that a large passenger commercial jet had hit the World Trade Center. Eventually, other television networks interrupted regular broadcasting with news of the crash. President George W. Bush was arriving at Emory Booker Elementary School in Sarasota, Florida. Initial news reports speculated that the crash had been an accident until United Airlines Flight 175 was flown into the South Tower 17 minutes after Flight 11 made impact. Aftermath. After the crash, the North Tower burned for 102 minutes before collapsing at 10:28 a.m. Although the impact itself caused extensive structural damage, the long-lasting fire ignited by jet fuel was blamed for the structural failure of the tower. In addition to the aircraft passengers and building occupants, hundreds of rescue workers also died when the tower collapsed. Cantor Fitzgerald L.P., an investment bank on floors 101 to 105 of the World Trade Center 1, lost 658 employees, considerably more than any other employer. Rescue workers at the World Trade Center site began to discover body fragments from Flight 11 victims within days of the attack. Some workers found bodies strapped to airplane seats and discovered the body of a flight attendant, with her hands bound, suggesting the hijackers might have used plastic handcuffs. Within a year, medical examiners had identified the remains of 33 victims who had been on board Flight 11. They identified 2 other Flight 11 victims, including the lead flight attendant Karen Martin, in 2006, while other unrelated body fragments were discovered near Ground Zero around the same time. In April 2007, examiners using newer DNA technology identified another Flight 11 victim. The remains of 2 hijackers, potentially from Flight 11, were also identified and removed from Memorial Park in Manhattan. The remains of the other hijackers have not been identified and are buried with other unidentified remains at this park. Sukhami's passport survived the crash and landed in the street below. soaked in jet fuel. It was picked up by a passerby who gave it to a New York City Police Department (NYPD) detective shortly before the South Tower collapsed. Investigators retrieved Mohamed Atta's luggage, which had not been loaded onto the flight. In it they found Omari's passport and driver's license, a videocassette for a Boeing 757 flight simulator, a folding knife, and pepper spray. In a recording, a few months later in Afghanistan, al-Qaeda's leader, Osama bin Laden, took responsibility for the attack. The attack on the World Trade Center exceeded even bin Laden's expectations. He had expected only the floors above the plane strikes to collapse. The flight recorders for Flight 11 and Flight 175 were never found. After the attacks, the flight number for flights on the same route with the same takeoff time was changed to American Airlines Flight 25. These flights now use a Boeing 737-800 instead of a Boeing 767. An American flag is flown on the jet bridge of Gate B-32 from which Flight 11 departed Logan Airport. As of September 2016, the closest identical American Airlines flight is Flight 166, which is scheduled to leave at 9:15 a.m. The flight often pushes back very closer next to Gate B-32. On April 26, 2013, a piece of the wing flap mechanism from a Boeing 767 was discovered wedged between two buildings at Park Place, near where other landing gear parts were found. At the National September 11 Memorial, the names of the 87 victims of Flight 11 are inscribed on the North Pole, on panels N1 and N2, and panels N74 and N76. Nationalities of people on the plane. Note: this list does not include the nationalities of the 5 hijackers. See also American Airlines Flight 77, United Airlines Flight 175, United Airlines Flight 93. List of tenants in One World Trade Center. The final 9/11 Commission Report. 9/11 NTSB Report. Victims of the American Airlines Flight 11 at the Wayback Machine. Archived January 12, 2010. American Airlines site explaining that all aircraft are accounted for at the Wayback Machine. Archived September 11, 2001. September 11, 2001. American Airlines site with condolences for deceased at the Wayback Machine. Archived September 12, 2001. September 12, 2001.